So you've no doubt heard over the last couple of weeks, quantum dot OLED. It's here. Everybody's excited for it. We're seeing all the graphs come out about how the new blue emitting layer on the quantum dots behind OLED technology allow it to transform the prior method, which was again bottom emission. We've talked about this on the channel again a few days ago or so. Uh, I can't keep track. Just go in the backlog. You'll see the video talking about it. But essentially, everybody is talking about the technology being this next level, right? Like, wow, oh my God, it's amazing. But all the examples we saw of QD-OLED have something that has brought a serious concern to me, and I'm going to lodge that with you guys and see what you guys think about it. So without any further ado, let's just get started. So at the top, you're going to see QD-OLED. At the bottom, you're going to see LED. One of the things that were immediately apparent in the demo that Samsung had looping is that the QD-OLED is not actually providing that next level color like we would get with the LED technology. They're trying to make it seem that way, but it's really just overly bright. And if this is the future behind what I would imagine would be maybe entry level quantum dots to keep the cost down, I'm not impressed. I'm not excited. Now, to be very specific, there are high-end and entry-level quantum dots. Because the price of an LCD LED panel is so low, you can put the most premium quantum dots behind that, and you can experience the next level of explosive color. To do that on an OLED, I don't know if that's something that was too difficult in the manufacturing process or not, but it's very clear when you see it next to the LED technology, it is struggling. Pay attention to this image right here. If you look at the top at QD-OLED, while yes, the brightness is there, it's still not as bright as the LED technology. I think we can all pretty much expect that going around, but what is more damning is the fact that the hues drop off and become less accurate. If you look at the top, around the laser beam itself, it gives off a hue of blue. However, when you're looking at the QD-OLED, it's just a flat shade of blue, where when you look down on the LED technology, you see all of these in-between shades gradating from blue to cyan within that singular beam. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I would imagine that this is more the director's intent than what we're seeing on the QD-OLED. Now, being somebody that does these YouTube video comparisons endlessly for many years, I can tell you that while you will never see a 100% representation of the image like you would going in person, you can see hue differences. And those hue differences are 100% a representation of a difference you will see in real life. So while this isn't a 100% comparison, this is going to at least be able to give this concern some kind of ground to stand on as something that may translate into real-world experience. Before anyone goes throwing their hands up in a riot to grab their pitchfork, I want you to pay attention to this example of the QD-OLED at the top. It's basically brighter in every aspect of being brighter, and when you look at the LED technology, it's made to be substantially dimmer. Now, if you know anything about LEDs, you know, one, that's definitely not the case. It doesn't get dimmer as you go into darker scenes. If anything, it has blooming and it becomes way too exaggerated, which makes me think that this comparison that Samsung had to put on for their QD-OLED was very skewed. And when we start actually comparing it to more capable quantum dot displays, it's going to fall even more in the disparaging difference, kind of category that we're seeing kind of here, right? But I will say one of the things that you will notice is that even though they're kind of skewing the results, those hues that we talked about earlier are not changing. Look at the actor's hair. The main actor you can see here, you can see the back of his head. The guy with the brown hair has this ambient glow coming from the background that isn't as prominent at all on the QD-OLED. If I had to put it into perspective, think a camera, right? It looks a lot like when you hit night mode, how some cameras try to expose to make sure you have all of the information in the scene, and other cameras just try to raise the ISO as high as possible, blowing out every major key component of the image quality for the sake of giving you some sort of shock and awe. That's what the QD-OLED appears to be doing here. It's just bright for the sake of being bright, but you're losing a lot of details. Now, if this is how they've accomplished it, again, I would be very concerned. Also, take a look at the color red from one of the passerbyers or runners in the background here. You can see the lady next to the guy with the silver hair. her jacket is just blossoming with color on the LED technology at the bottom versus QD-OLED, where it's just faded. And this is kind of going to be one of the biggest reoccurring themes. And these are in the hues, so you know it's going to translate into real world experience. In this example, we can see that exaggerated further. So if you take a look at the red, any color red, it's going to look way better on the LED technology at the bottom. And if you pay close attention, I don't know if you have to go full screen to see this, but you can see massive, massive lossages of color in areas such as the tree line in the background, the mountain in the background, just the wood in general on the ship. It's just losing so much color on QD-OLED. Look at the engine, it's losing color. Look at the red as the sails are kind of floating about. They are not reflecting the warm ambient light, the warm white light from the environment the way it is on LED. And this is supposed to be next level tech. Now, here's the thing. Some of this has got to be true because I'm just saying there's no way that it's not picking up these hue differences if it's so much better and so much more vibrant. Now, again, you can try to say, oh, it's brighter, and because it's brighter, we're just losing all that information. I would follow that logic. However, if you look at darker areas of the image, it also holds true as well. Take a look at the faces of the characters standing on the ship. You'll notice that on the LED technology, their faces are warm and they have color to them, where on, again, QD-OLED, they're pale and overly bright. Now, again, we can kind of see this in even all the darker areas of the environment. So if you look in the background to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll notice warm white, warm light. You'll notice the foliage has green like it's supposed to, where when we look at the top on the bottom right-hand corner of the QD-OLED, it's just washed out. And again, this may be an issue algorithmically that needs to be tightened up via firmware before it ships to market, because I'm telling you right now, if it ships like this, it's just going to be overexposed. Now, I have some reason of believing this is the actual representation on top of what I've already presented. Samsung is known for over-brightening their displays, and this appears to be an over-brightening issue. If this is what it sounds like with typical Samsung, they're just trying to shock a bunch of people with a bright OLED, not really caring about accuracy, where the LED may have thought of those things a lot more carefully. Take this example. We can see what I'm talking about even further. Look at all the dark areas of this image. No matter what you look at, what part of the image you look at, the LED technology is just rendering everything better. Look at the face, look at the jacket, look at any dark part of the screen. So we can't even just say that algorithmically, this is something that's targeting bright areas of the screen and blowing them out like what typically happens when something's over brightening. This looks like a general global brightening over brightness, and it doesn't work. It looks very flat, very washed out, and this absolutely would need a calibration immediately after taking it out of the box. I mean, if you just look at the disparaging differences and the hues that you're having between the LED and the QD-OLED, it's major. Now, why this is important is because the quantum dots are supposed to add a benefit, right? But here's the problem. They're making this quantum dot OLED brighter, and as we know, when things get brighter, you're unlocking more color volume. That color volume allows you to see more hues and more shades that are just impossible to express on something that isn't as bright. The problem is this LED technology at the bottom is showing more hues and more shades while still being the dimmer TV, implying that the quantum dots that they've put in are either not being effectively hit with the blue light properly, or they're just not as high end as they need to be to get the kind of color that we have seen on higher end quantum dot LED sets. And the thing is, again, there are low end and high end LED displays. Take something like the Samsung Q60T and compare it to a QN90A, and you'll see a disparaging difference in color, even though they both boast quantum dot technology. So again, this concept of high-end and low-end quantum dot color is something that has existed for years in the LED space, which we may just see play a role into the OLED space. Now, I doubt that they would be stupid enough to do something like that on a TV no doubt as expensive as the QD-OLED, which is why this suggests a programming issue at the very least, but this picture speaks 1,000 words. So then, let's take something a little darker, like this scene where they're having the jet fly through the night sky as hellfire kind of rains down upon them from their opposing opposition or enemy or whatever you want to call it. The big things to take away are the light sources. Everything, for the most part, is just washed out. You can notice that again, you're missing that warm white light, and it's not even to say that they're not equal levels of brightness, because in this scene, they totally are. But more damningly, take a look at the jet, the main jet you're seeing in this shot. You can see that their hues are just off on the QD-Oled. It appears almost a palish color, where on the LED at the bottom, you are seeing a clear difference in hues, all the ambient light popping and bouncing and reflecting off of the ship itself, giving you that three-dimensional aspect of the color rendering, where again, on the QD-Oled, it's appearing flat, and like the only goal was brightness. Also, look at the hues and the overall night sky. It's just one flat color of blue on the QD-Oled, where on the LED, you see a various amounts of cyan, blue, and different other shades in between. This further speaking to there's a serious color issue happening on Samsung's QD-Oled. Now again, if we remember how Samsung likes to do their TVs, they like to push overly cool imagery and make things really oversaturated and overly bright. And this is seeming to plague Samsung on their QD-Oled that they wanted to show off at CES. Now, I'm shocked that nobody but me has pointed this out yet, but this is something that seems to be an issue. I don't know if it's a programming thing, an algorithmic thing, but when you look at images like this, it becomes a kind of clear word, a clear example of what's happening. We are clearly seeing that the quantum dot technology that they're boasting about is just being a really bright display. Because you're not going to tell me that when you look at the LED at the bottom, the hues are so much better. Every shade of green, every shade of yellow, every shade of blue comes alive, regardless of brightness level, which these are striking a similar level of brightness. Even when you look in the dark areas, the hues are just better on the LED at the bottom, which begs the question, is QD-Oled actually going to be an upgrade, or is it something that we're just now going to have to accept is going to require calibration adjustments? This is why I said most people buying the technology will be beta testers until they figure out how to properly program it, adjust it, listen to negative feedback, apply it to the new models, maybe apply a firmware down the road, but essentially you're basically doing all of this hyping up and excitement and being enthusiastic about something that will have growing pains from what we're seeing early on and all of these example images that were presented today. Now, again, this isn't 100% representation of what you'll see with your real eyes. However, this definitely does show disparaging hue and color differences, and given the brightness advantage with quantum dot, it shouldn't exist. At the very least, they should both be similar, and we're seeing a disparaging difference even though they're rocking new technology. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments down below, and as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Until the next video, I'll see you guys later.